The silence was the loudest thing in the house. It was a thick, suffocating blanket that had settled over everything the moment Richard's sedan screeched out of the driveway 3 weeks ago. Amelia, Amy, as she'd always been to him, to everyone, felt its weight in her bones. It was a silence filled with the ghosts of his booming laughter, his heavy footsteps on the oak floors, and the incessant droning murmur of the television, always tuned to the financial news or the nightly lottery drawing. Rick had been a man of noise, of presence, of filling every available space with his ambitions and his disappointments. Now the space he left behind was a vacuum, and Amy felt herself shrinking within it. The house, a modest 2-story colonial in a quiet Ohio suburb, had been their dream. Or rather, it had been his. He'd picked it for its resale value and its proximity to the highway for his commute. Amy had wanted a garden, a small patch of earth to call her own, but the backyard was dominated by a pristine, unused patio Rick had installed for entertaining clients who never seemed to materialize. Like everything else, the house was a testament to a future he envisioned, one where she was an accessory, a quiet manager of his domestic backdrop. For 12 years she had played the part. She'd organized the closets, cooked the meals, and listened endlessly to his monologues about market trends, investment schemes, and his one true obsession, the Powerball. The lottery wasn't just a game to Rick, it was a religion. It was the escape hatch from his life as a mid-level sales manager, a job he despised with a fiery passion. He spoke of the win, not as a possibility, but as an inevitability. He had systems, charts, and theories. He tracked hot numbers and cold numbers with the dedication of a seasoned statistician, convinced he could crack a code that was, by its very nature, pure chance. Amy, in contrast, was a woman of quiet certainties. She found comfort in the tangible, the warmth of a coffee mug in her hands, the predictable plot of a romance novel, the scent of rain on asphalt. His obsession with the abstract, with the 1 in 292 million chance, felt like another language she could never quite understand. But she'd supported him, as she always did. Every Wednesday and Saturday, she would be the one to run to the convenience store, his meticulously chosen numbers scribbled on a napkin, his voice a tense command over the phone. "Don't forget the power play, Amy. It's a fool's game without the multiplier." The memory of their last trip to the store surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. It had been a week before he left. A tense silence had simmered between them for days, the air thick with unspoken grievances. A major deal he'd been counting on had fallen through, and the lottery jackpot had just rolled over, climbing to an astronomical sum. His desperation was a palpable, frantic energy in their small kitchen. "Here," he'd said, shoving a crumpled $20 bill and a greasy napkin into her hand. He didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the television screen where the new jackpot was being announced. "Get 10 tickets, and use the numbers I told you." She'd looked at the list, it was always the same. His birthday, 08-15, the year he bought his prized Mustang, 2019. His mother's house number, 42. His old football jersey number, 33. It was a litany of his life, a numerical biography of Richard J. Anderson. Her own history was nowhere to be found. "Rick, maybe we should save this," she'd whispered, glancing at a pile of unopened bills on the counter. "The car payment is due." He had turned to her then, his face a mask of cold fury. "Save it? You want to save $20 when we're 1 ticket away from $500 million? Don't be stupid, Amy. Your problem is you think too small. You always have." The words had struck her, not with their usual sting, but with a strange clarifying force. He didn't see her. He saw a worrier, an obstacle, an anchor holding him back from his glorious imaginary destiny. At the gas station, the bored cashier barely looked up as Amy filled out the lottery slips. On the last one, as she marked the familiar sequence, 08, 15, 19, 33, 42, a sudden quiet rebellion sparked within her. Her hands were trembling slightly. With a defiant press of the pencil, she shaded in a different final number. She ignored his final Powerball number and instead filled in 26, her own birthday, June 26th. It was a tiny, invisible act, a secret she would keep for herself. It felt like taking a breath after being underwater for a decade. She paid the man, tucked the tickets into her purse and drove home, the little secret a warm coal in her chest. A week later, Rick was gone. There was no dramatic fight, no tearful goodbye. She came home from her part-time job at the local library to find his closets empty and a note on the kitchen table. It was short, brutal, and devoid of emotion. He'd met someone else, someone who understood his ambitions. He was moving to Chicago to start a new life. The final line was the cruelest. "Don't worry about the house, the bank can have it. I'm done with this small life." The 3 weeks since had been a blur of shock and a deep, hollowing grief. It wasn't just the loss of her husband. It was the loss of the woman she had been, the one who had believed her purpose was to be his support system. Now, that system had collapsed, leaving her buried in the rubble. The unopened bills on the counter had become a mountain. A foreclosure notice had been taped to the front door. Her world, once meticulously managed, was unraveling thread by thread. This evening was particularly bleak. A cold October rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside her. She was sorting through a junk drawer in the kitchen, a place that had become a mausoleum of their shared life. Old keys, dried-up pens, ticket stubs from movies she couldn't remember, and a handful of old lottery tickets Rick had deemed duds. Her hand brushed against the thin, crisp paper of the tickets she had bought on that final day. She had shoved them in here after the drawing, assuming, as always, that they were worthless. Rick was the one who checked the numbers, his ritual a mix of fervent hope and inevitable bitter disappointment. Since he'd left, she hadn't even thought about them. Driven by a morbid curiosity, she pulled them out. 10 identical slips, all bearing his numbers, his life, except for the last one. She could still feel the phantom thrill of her small act of defiance. On a whim, she opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her tired face. She typed Powerball winning numbers and the date of the drawing into the search bar. The official lottery website loaded, its cheerful, garish colors a stark contrast to the grayness of her kitchen. She found the archived drawing. Her eyes scanned the first ticket, comparing the numbers. Nothing. The second, the third, the fourth. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Of course, it was always nothing. It was a fool's game, just as he'd said, though not in the way he meant. She reached the 10th ticket, the last one, the one with her mark on it. She held it under the dim light of the kitchen fixture, her heart beating a slow, tired rhythm. The winning numbers on the screen were 08, 15, 19, 33, 42. Amy's breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be. She stared at the ticket in her hand. There they were, printed in black ink, his numbers, all 5 of them. She had matched all 5 white balls. That was the second-tier prize, $1 million. A life-changing sum. A wave of dizziness washed over her. $1 million. It was a number so large it felt unreal. She thought of the foreclosure notice, the mountain of debt. It was a miracle. But then her eyes drifted to the final number on the screen, the red Powerball. The winning Powerball number was 26. Amy's vision blurred. She looked from the screen to the ticket, from the ticket back to the screen. 08, 15, 19, 33, 42, and the Powerball, 26. Her number, her birthday. The one tiny change she had made. It wasn't a second-tier prize. It was the jackpot. The full, staggering, world-altering sum that had been plastered on billboards across the state. $478 million. The ticket slipped from her numb fingers, fluttering down to the linoleum floor. The silence in the house was no longer empty. It was screaming. Amy leaned against the counter, her legs unable to support her, and slid slowly to the floor. She stared at the small piece of paper, a symbol of his obsession and her silent rebellion, now a testament to a fate so ironic, so utterly impossible, that she could only do one thing. She began to laugh. It was a broken, hysterical sound that filled the empty house, the sound of a life shattering and being reborn all at once. The laughter eventually subsided, leaving Amy in a heap on the cold kitchen floor, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. It was replaced by a tremor that started in her hands and spread through her entire body. Shock. This was the clinical numbing phase of it. The winning ticket lay face up a few feet away, looking as innocuous as a grocery receipt. $478 million. The number was an absurdity, a string of digits with no anchor in her reality of foreclosure notices and a dwindling checking account. For a wild moment, she thought she had dreamed it, a bizarre fantasy cooked up by a grieving mind. But the ticket was still there. Slowly, shakily, she pushed herself up. Her first instinct wasn't to call a lawyer or to scream from the rooftops. It was to call her sister, Sarah, a practical, no-nonsense nurse who lived 3 states away. They hadn't spoken much since Rick left. Amy had been too cocooned in her shame to reach out. She dialed the number, her thumb hovering over the call button. What would she even say? "You'll never guess what happened. My runaway husband's lottery obsession just paid off, but for me." It sounded like the plot of a bad movie. When Sarah's groggy voice answered, Amy couldn't form the words. She just started to cry, not the hysterical sobs of before, but a deep, ragged weeping that came from the very core of her exhaustion and loneliness. Sarah, ever the caregiver, stayed on the line, her voice a calming balm, coaxing the story out of her sister, one fragmented sentence at a time. "Amy, listen to me," Sarah said, her voice suddenly sharp and clear once the full picture emerged. "Don't move. Don't call anyone else. Sign the back of that ticket right now, then put it somewhere safe. I'm booking the first flight out in the morning." Hanging up the phone, Amy felt a sliver of solid ground beneath her feet for the first time in weeks. She did as she was told, her name, Amelia C. Anderson, written in shaky cursive on the back of the ticket. She sealed it in a plastic bag and hid it in the bottom of a flour canister, a place Rick would never have looked. The days that followed were a surreal whirlwind, guided by Sarah's steady hand. They met with a team of legal and financial experts, a group of people so professional and discreet that they made the impossible feel manageable. Amy, who once felt nervous questioning a discrepancy on a grocery bill, now sat at the head of a mahogany table, making decisions about trusts, annuities, and tax implications. The lump sum cash option, after taxes, would be a little over $250 million. The advisors were impressed by her composure. They saw a quiet, thoughtful woman, not a hysterical lottery winner. They expected requests for mansions and private jets. Amy's first question, however, was, "Can I stop the foreclosure on my house?" The lawyer had smiled gently. "Ms. Anderson, you can buy the whole bank." A week later, the wire transfer hit the account they had set up. Amy stared at the number on her banking app, a figure so long it barely fit on the screen. It felt no more real than it had on the lottery website. But then she made the first transfer. With a few clicks, she paid off the mortgage on the house. The aggressive, threatening letters would stop. The house, her house, was safe. That felt real. She didn't move out. She didn't buy a new car. Instead, she drove her 10-year-old sedan to a local nursery. She spent the entire afternoon picking out saplings, rose bushes, and bags of rich, dark soil. The next morning, she was in the backyard tearing up the pristine, sterile patio that Rick had been so proud of. She worked until her muscles ached and her hands were caked with dirt, digging a space for the garden she had always wanted. As she planted the first rose bush, she felt a profound sense of reclamation. This wasn't just about planting flowers, it was about planting roots in a life that was finally her own. Her next visit was to the West End Public Library, the place that had been her sanctuary and her part-time employer. She loved the quiet order of the shelves, the smell of old paper, and the joy of helping a child find their new favorite book. She knew from her boss, a kind, perpetually worried woman named Martha, that the library's children's literacy program was on the chopping block due to citywide budget cuts. It was a program that provided free tutoring and books to underprivileged kids in the community. She found Martha in her office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. Amy explained that she had come into an unexpected inheritance and wished to make an anonymous donation. When she wrote the check, Martha's eyes filled with tears. It was enough to fund the program for the next 20 years, expand it, and renovate the entire children's wing. "Amy, this is a miracle," Martha whispered. For Amy, it was something more tangible. It was purpose. Rick had dreamed of using the money to escape, to build walls around himself made of gold. She was using it to build bridges. It was inevitable that he would find out. The Lottery Commission announced that a single winning ticket had been sold in their small Ohio town. 2 weeks later, as Amy was watering her new garden, a sleek, unfamiliar rental car pulled into her driveway. Her stomach clenched. Richard got out. He looked different, thinner, with a nervous energy that had replaced his usual blustering confidence. He was wearing an expensive suit that seemed a size too big, a desperate attempt to project the success he had left her for. "Amy," he said, walking towards her, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I heard the news. I can't believe it. Our ticket won." Amy put down the watering can, her heart beating a steady, calm rhythm that surprised her. The old fear, the instinct to placate him, was gone. "Hello, Rick. It's my ticket. I bought it and I signed it." His smile faltered. "Don't be like that. You know what I mean. Our numbers. I told you, didn't I? I told you my system would work. We're rich, Amy. We can finally have the life we always talked about. He tried to take her hand, but she stepped back. The life you talked about, you mean? She said, her voice even. The life you left me to go find with someone else, remember? You left me with a foreclosure notice and a note on the table. A flicker of anger crossed his face. That was a mistake. I was under a lot of pressure. But this changes everything. This is a sign. We were meant to be. That money is for us. No, Rick, she said, feeling a profound sense of clarity. That money is for me. And you're right. Your numbers did come up. All 5 of them. The $1 million prize. But that's not what we won, is it? He looked confused. What are you talking about? The jackpot. The Powerball, Rick. The final number. It was 26, she said, watching his face as the realization dawned. My birthday. The number I put down because I was tired of being invisible. The number that made it the jackpot. It was my number, not yours. The mask of civility dropped completely, revealing the raw, ugly greed beneath. You have to give me half, he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. That's my money. I'll take you to court. I'll tell everyone you stole it from me. Amy looked at this man, a stranger in a suit standing in the middle of her blooming garden, and felt nothing but a distant pity. He was still a prisoner of his own noise, his frantic ambition. He couldn't see that she had already found a wealth he would never understand. You are welcome to try, Rick, she said calmly. My lawyers are very good. Now, I think you should leave. You're standing on my roses. He stood there for a long moment, sputtering, his threats turning to desperate pleas, but he saw the unshakable resolve in her eyes. It was a look he had never seen on her before. Defeated, he turned and got back in his car, speeding away from the house and the life that was no longer his to claim. As the car disappeared down the street, Amy felt the last of his shadow lift from her life. She turned back to her garden, to the vibrant reds and yellows of the new blooms. The money hadn't brought her happiness. It had given her the freedom to find her own. It had been the key, but she was the one who had to be brave enough to turn it and walk through the door. She took a deep breath, the air filled with the scent of damp earth and new beginnings, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt completely, peacefully, at home. True luck isn't found in a winning ticket, but in the unexpected opportunity to break free from the shadow of someone else's dreams, to finally cultivate your own. Amelia's story teaches that sometimes the universe forces us to lose what we believed was our safe harbor, to show us that the greatest prize is the courage to be the architect of our own destiny. The fortune wasn't the ultimate reward. It was the tool that allowed her to rediscover her own worth, long after the man who was supposed to love her had decided she had none. If Amelia's journey from heartbreak to hope moved you, please show your support by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more inspirational stories.